Now, the 15th of August marks 2 years since the Taliban stormed to power in Kabul. And what this has meant is the complete invisibilization of women in Afghanistan. When the United States of America struck a deal with the Taliban promised to be different in their second avatar. But 2 years on, it's a fairly long time to assess. And what has clearly happened in Afghanistan is that the war in Afghanistan, more than anything else, is actually a war on women of Afghanistan. More than any other section of people, it is the women and young girls of Afghanistan who paid the biggest price and have been the most affected due to the obscurantist and the irrational rules imposed by the Taliban. Nearly 2 decades of hard-fought and relative progress in women's rights has been completely wiped off under Taliban's iron fist rule. Afghan women face some of the harshest suppression globally. And this is dictated by the stringent and the strange interpretation of the Sharia law by the Taliban. Consider this. When Angel Jibreel visited Prophet Muhammad at Mount Hira, the very first word uttered by Angel Jibreel to Prophet Muhammad was Iqra, which means to read. And the Taliban, who claim to be upholding the Sharia, have barred women and girls from reading. When the Taliban stormed to power, they had initially pledged to uphold basic human rights. But 2 years on, the hardline Islamists have severely trampled upon women's freedoms. They've placed restrictions on virtually every aspect of women's life in Afghanistan. The so-called Ministry for Propagation of Virtue and Prevention of Vice is now on an overdrive. It is responsible for enforcing the Taliban's narrow morality laws. And Afghan women and girls have been prohibited from being at school, right up from 6th grade onwards. They can only be provided with medical care by women doctors. Female-run businesses have been completely prohibited. In many areas of the country, women have been instructed to stay at home and to not step out. They're permitted in some cases to travel, but they can travel only for not more than 75 kilometers without a mahram, which is a male relative. A strict dress code has been imposed, which involves wearing the burqa. They're barred from working at the United Nations and even at non-governmental organizations. And most recently, women's beauty salons have also been shut. The United Nations says that the situation for women and girls' rights in Afghanistan has reverted back to the pre-2002 era. The echoes of oppressive policies resonate throughout the country. Women feel completely invisible, suffocated and imprisoned in their own land. The education, work, basic freedoms have all been stripped away for Afghan girls and women.
When a girl does not study, she cannot become a doctor, an engineer, a reporter and a teacher. When a girl is illiterate, her future will be ruined. Her country will be undeveloped.
From my point of view, if the situation continues like this, the future will be dark and uncertain. It will cause that half of the society gets paralyzed.
Now, even though Afghanistan's universities have expressed their readiness to welcome female students, the ruling Taliban leaders, who wield the ultimate power over their fate, have disallowed this. When the Taliban had been ousted from power, Afghan women had got the right to study, work and travel. And now that the Americans have been driven out from the country, the world has also turned a complete blind eye to the plight of women in Afghanistan. Many Afghan women feel the international community has neglected them since the Taliban took over. They see the Western nations as watching and condemning and sometimes even engaging with the Taliban, but doing very little to improve the plight of women who are caught in this country. In reality, the war in Afghanistan did not end with the Americans packing their bags and fleeing. If anything, the war for the women in Afghanistan has just gotten that much more desperate and that much more difficult. And as 2 years under the Taliban have come and gone by, Afghanistan, a nation that has been described as the heart of Asia, continues to bleed. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.